What's up, Eager to Pleasers? Welcome back to another episode of the Eager to Please podcast. I gotta say, we are truly in for a treat this week. Joining us on this episode to share their personal perspectives on this topic of hearing versus listening is not one, but two very special guests. What's unique about this pair is that they've been married for over 5 years, have been through their share of ups and downs, but have managed to figure out ways to improve communication so they both feel seen and heard. We are so fortunate to have the opportunity to listen as they share some of their techniques that work for them as a couple. One of these voices may sound familiar to you, as she's been on the podcast before, and I give her 100% credit for bringing up the idea of not only bringing in a male perspective on this topic, but having a couple's take on it. I'm so grateful and honored to introduce Megan and Eric Flores. Thank you both so much for joining me on this episode. Glad to have you here.
So awesome.
Eric, I bet you never imagined that you'd be sitting in this seat when I asked you a few years ago if Megan would be interested in coming on the podcast as an expert guest. And here you are now. So thanks for being willing to be open and vulnerable to our listeners.
Oh, of course. I mean, you've been such a great friend and you've helped. I mean, we can get into later about how you've helped me out in my journey, musically and things of that nature. So you're a great friend to the family. And I'm so glad Megan agreed to participate in the last one. And we're just excited to be here. I'm happy to be here. Except you're going to find out how much of a nerd like I really am. The kind of stuff I like to talk about.
Well, that's great. Bring it. As you both know, one of the main reasons that I started this podcast was to reflect on past mistakes that I've made and to explore ways to course correct for the future. So this could be used as a learning tool for others and as an opportunity for me to grow from those experiences. And one of the things that I learned looking back on my almost 20-year relationship with my ex-husband is that we completely missed the mark on communicating effectively. We would process conversations differently, which always led to one of us feeling unseen and unheard. And when that happened, he would shut down and I would get defensive. So I'm curious to know if either of you have experienced the same thing and how you handle situations when you disagree. I see some laughing going on over there.
No,
it's more like, in my world, sometimes you have people come into my office that's like, oh, I never fight with my spouse. And I'm like, okay, that's not actually what I want to hear. That tells me something. My first thing is like, I don't know how often we fight, but certainly enough. Or just, I don't know, fighting and disagreeing the same thing.
Yeah.
Some level. But
I mean, I'll jump in and say, I think the nature of putting your life together with somebody else who is different and has, we're aligned in very special ways, like in our values and, how we treat our marriage. We have so many really tight alignments, but at the same time, we're different people that have different needs and different desires and different styles. And so I think like by nature, everything's a negotiation and everything is going to take a lifetime of working things out. So I think the idea that you're just magically paired or something like that, to fit perfectly with somebody, like I think that kind of is more in like the fantasy realm. And I think that, for us being in our marriage, we see this as a full lifetime, no matter what situation. So I think if you really look at things that way, it's like, okay, do you want to have a good marriage where you communicate and figure it out? Or do you want to have hell for the next 50 years?
Right.
I think like when you're staring down that, you really do realize like that no matter what, it's best to negotiate. It's best to clarify. And, just like anything, I think we're humans. I think there is a tendency to shut down or to be overloaded or to not have the capacity to have certain conversations. Mm-hmm. But I think for us, we don't shy away from the fact that this is going to be a lifelong negotiation with two different people who've committed themselves to each other. So.
And I think having some level, again, I agree with what Eric's saying. I always ask clients two things in regards to their marriage. One, how committed are you to your marriage? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like, I'm the most committed I could ever be. And then the second question I ask is, how satisfied are you in your marriage? 1 to 10. But going back to the committed, I'm like always wanting new things. I don't really commit to anything very long kind of person, but like I can say like I'm a 10 out of 10 committed to my marriage. I will be married to Eric till death do us part. But I would also say I'm a 10 out of 10 committed to not being in a miserable marriage. And I think about that every single day. My wiring is a gift and a curse. But like, I'll think to myself like, oh, if I don't make up with Eric, if I don't find a way to communicate with Eric here, and then we keep doing it over and over and over again, that's how you hate each other eventually. I think some level of also like a long-term perspective for me. Oh, if I don't address this now, or I don't fix this now, or I don't change now, I know tons of people who are married and miserable. And so to me, yeah, staying married is important, but being in a loving relationship is like the quest of my life. I mean, I tell people that, like, I want to be at the end of my life still in love.
Yeah.
And in like. And I think that does happen like in the little moments and choices every day.
I want to dig into that real quick, Megan, because to be a couple and happy in a relationship, like you had just said, I think requires being happy with yourself first. And that was an epiphany to me, after the divorce had settled and we had calmed down and things started getting back into quote unquote a new normal. And I guess neither one of us really realized that we were just unhappy with ourselves. Like both of us were. And I'm sure he would say the same thing if I were to bring him on this as a guest. But if you're not good, then how can the couple be good? And so I just wanted to ask your opinions on that. Your commitment to each other is amazing, but your commitment to yourself too, in order to be happy to pour into that relationship, I think is also important.
Yeah.
I think from the perspective of not looking for the other person to be your savior.
Yes. Love that.
Because I like scapegoat Eric and make him like the problem and like the savior all the time. So, and that's the level of perspective. But I will say too, like I have a lot of empathy for people before we let Eric answer. Eric and I both went through the hard parts of our stories and the transformational experiences before we met each other. And so I think when we met each other, we had already done kind of the deep inner work and knew who we were and knew how to pick the right partner. I think when you get married younger, or not that we were, but like younger or just less aware of who you are, it's trickier and like it's harder to do. Some people do the work by themselves and then come together. And most couples do the work together and hope that they can kind of stay at the same pace. Yeah. So I think that's more of what I've been saying. Like, am I ultimately happy with myself? Yes and no. I'm like kind of a discontent person in general. So I'm like, yes, I think there's a general kind of like likability. I like myself. I'm kind of content with myself enough to understand when I'm making Eric a problem. I can say, no, I am my own problem.
I love that. Yeah.
So that's maybe kind of how I would see it.
Yeah. I mean, I think just like anything, there's always going to be natural discontent for how you handle things and your limitations. I know that, one of the things that I inherently struggle with is just being so limited. I have to get up super early and, provide for my family and work my ass off and be available in my line of work. I've tried to commit to not being the dad that's like picking up the phone every 10 seconds when I'm in front of the kids. So, but in that, everything's kind of a trade-off. So the biggest thing for me is, I am limited. I want to spend more time with my wife. I want to spend more time with my kids and all these things. But I think to like get back to the point, I think what I would say about me and Megan as a whole, and, I think people can watch this and be like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say. And, oh, you've only been married 5 years. And, oh, have you really had any trouble in your life? Like, fine, whoever's listening, they can speculate about a lot of that stuff. But I think the reality is that like fundamentally, I think there's 2 or 3 things that me and Megan believe. And one of them is we want to tell the truth. We want to see the world as it is and not how we want it to be. So we want to be honest with ourselves. We want to be honest with each other. We both want to be able to call blue, blue and purple, purple. That is a very high fundamental value for both of us.
But you first have to tell the truth to yourself to tell it to somebody else.
Yes.
I often say that in my office.
Yeah. So I think the truth absolutely matters. At least pursuing being honest with yourself, and everybody's got their blind spots. Everybody has some level of denial. But I think if you're constantly like looking introspectively, what do I need to be doing? Where are my limitations? And as long as I think you're committed to that, that's maybe a good start. And then the second thing really is for us, and again, I know for probably listeners who might have different stories and struggle, but we personally take the vow of marriage incredibly sacred. Mm-hmm. To me, I'm a devout Catholic, and to me, it's like I didn't only like make a covenant and an oath to my wife, but I also made a covenant and oath to God. Mm-hmm. And I went and I stood in front of my family and my friends, and I did all this to create something that won't ever be broken. So kind of going back to where I started in the conversation, there is no way out. So do you want to work this out, or do you want, pain? But I think but what I mean, if we're not committed to like those things, then everything else is like a cracked door that we can try to walk through anytime there's conflict, Mm-hmm. So, because me and you have had this conversation about people who do get married young. And I said, because everybody asks, like, what's the most important thing? Knowing yourself, this, that. And I said, I really think it's more commitment to what you say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. You feel like you're young and I don't know myself. I don't know what I'm going to be like in 10 years. I don't know what I'm going to be like in 10 minutes. But, I follow through, X, Y, and Z. To me, I think there's some level of hope. But to get back to your question without kind of ranting on, we both hold those two things pretty sacred. Now, we don't do it perfectly.
And we both
prioritize like that.
Eric would say, I'd be like, what's your favorite thing about me? And he'd say, like, you're so reasonable. And I'm like, that's not what I want you to say. Early on, like, I'd be like, I want you to say, like, I'm so funny, I'm so fun, probably. But he would just like keep coming back to like, I picked you because you're reasonable. And I'm like,
you tell the truth.
The most beautiful, like over time in our marriage, I've seen like, oh, okay, that makes more sense to me, because I think that like I was just sitting with somebody this week and I have empathy. Like, people don't have enough like forethought. I'm almost scared to say this too, because I think people are picky enough about their partners at this point in the world where they're not picking anybody. But also I think like we lack in a foresight to be able to know, it's like, oh, I like this person in this moment. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I say all the time, you can marry almost anybody if you're not going to have kids. But like, do you think about how this person will fight with you? Do you think about what kind of parent this person will be? Do you look at evidence in their life? Because Eric, love you, but when we met, the evidence, like there were a lot of things that weren't in the order I wanted them to be. Right. But I also like, he had a track record that told me who he was. Mm-hmm. Trust the things he was saying. Mm-hmm. That now I have more like evidence of.
Yeah.
But I really feel like I just sit with people sometimes and I'm like, man, did you just marry the hot guy or the hot girl with like little, and didn't think about what this would be like to negotiate with them?
I mean, that's a valid question.
Well, it's attraction and stuff like that, to that point, like it is important and it's fun. And, everybody wants like that, beautiful, like Hallmark romance, right. Everybody wants. But I think like also knowing that you could be deceived by your fleeting feelings is just really hard, like I think, again, the realist in us, and Megan hates this kind of stuff because she just likes fun times, but like turmoil is going to come. Trouble is going to come. There's going to be highs and there's going to be lows, and there's going to be things, conflict, and there's going to be change, and it's going to be scary. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody deals with that type of stuff. And I feel like that's kind of baked into the cake. So I think if you're picking a partner based on like, ooh, this is sexy and this is fun and this is good time, it's like, well, might be when you're 23 and don't have any bills and no kids, and your parents are giving you, $7,000 a month. Whoop-de-doo. Like, that's a fleeting moment.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful moment. Have fun, but that's not always the case. I think it's just thinking ahead for stuff like that.
Yeah. So let me circle back here to something that we had mentioned a little bit earlier about supporting your partner. How do you each show each other that you're actively listening in a conversation? I mean, I know Megan and I talked a little bit about this like in a previous episode, where if she's heated or you're heated, she'll just be like, listen, we don't have time right this second. to dig into this because we have kids and I got to go to work and you got to go to work and whatever else. But we're going to schedule some time like in 3 days whenever I'm cooled off and you're cooled off. What are some other strategies that you all use to show each other that you're actively ready to listen to the conversation with no other agenda other than the two of you and how you're going to work it out? Because I love that one. I love like, listen, I'm hearing you, but let's revisit this.
Yeah.
I wish my initial thought is like, oh, I wish I was like better at actively listening. But in a fight, in like a disagreement, I really think I'm mostly just trying to get myself heard.
Yeah.
It's, I know, relatable.
It is.
I think one of the best things we even did for our relationship is like when we get really stuck, we'll like have a third party help us communicate. Mm-hmm. I don't know that that's the message for everybody. But
you have to be careful.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be like, for me, it's like a mentor that I really trust, that I'm like, hey, will you help us talk through this? Mm-hmm. And so Eric and I literally sat there and talked through this conversation with, most of my people are in the therapy world.
Right. Which is helpful. You have a leg up on most people.
Yeah. But that was like so helpful. I was like, man, and we both kind of were going toward it. Like, we don't want to go. Yeah. And then came out of there like, man, how do we do that like once a month? Mm-hmm. Because I think the biggest thing is like, it wasn't really even that either of us said anything different. It probably was that we were both listening to the other person and going slow.
Yeah, I think it's more about going slow for sure. I mean, but yeah, on that note, I mean, I know that not everybody has like you just said, like access to, professionals who can be impartial. I think like impartiality is helpful, but I think in some ways the next best thing is like surrounding yourself with people that are pro unification. It's like, I think it's hard if it's like, this is your friend or this is my friend. Right. And I think you had a friend that like had a great example. They're like, we're not team Megan or team Eric, we're like team Flores, Mm-hmm. So I think like surrounding yourself with people like that. And, again, I think there is some wisdom to being careful of who you confide in with your relationship, because that could get dicey in certain ways. But I think at the very least, like people that are pro like your marriage, I think are helpful advocates and partners, to go to. But to kind of get back to your question of how we signal to each other that we're actively listening. I mean, again, hate to pop the bubble, but a lot of times we're not. Like we just, like
there's the key, guys. There you go. Right. We're not.
Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, there's just like, again, going back to like the limited, capacity and the nature of where we're at in our life. Right. Our life is so slammed, which why I don't want to keep like always going back to this, but it's like why we kind of lean back on our vow, which is like, look, we can't sort this out right now, but at the very least, like you're not leaving, I'm not leaving. We will sort this out. We will find a time, whether we got to get up at 5 a.m. tomorrow and talk about, for 18 minutes, and then we got to talk for another 12 minutes at 2 p.m. when the kids are sleeping. It's just, again, going back to like the truth telling of it, I don't want to create this fantasy that we sit there and carve out a space and we look into each other's eyes and we say, you got my full undivided attention. Right. My brain's flooded with 700 things. And I'm tired because it's 9:45 and I'm waking up at 4 a.m.
Which is like, we do the front work. Like, I mean, we do this in our marriage imperfectly, but like we have family meetings and that's evolved over time. Ideally, it would be at the same time every week. But basically we have a shared note and it says like urgent things to talk about. Then there's like urgent things Eric needs to do for Megan, which always has like, and then it's like things I need to do that can wait. But like we have this list that I know Eric looks at. I look at it. We allot time to do it. So we do like the prep work to set ourselves up for success. But then like in the arguments and disagreements that come up, at least for me, I don't set out listening to Eric. I set out like justifying how I'm right or who my point is. But I am good at stopping myself at some place and saying either internally, hopefully externally, I have no idea what's even happening right now. I will say this, like, I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't even know what's happening right now. Like, and that almost like gives me some sort of break. Yeah. And then I remember inside of me that like, this is regardless of how I feel about Eric in the moment, like this is somebody I love And even if I don't have love for him as like my husband at the moment, I do as like a human being that deserves like kindness and respect.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's such a good point. Yeah.
I kind of go back to that is like, I mean, I think on some level it is God's, like it is rooted at some level in my faith of like, I could hate his guts at the moment, but there's something about stopping the conversation for myself. I can stop it, kind of acknowledge I don't even know what's happening or what I'm saying, and acknowledge like, this is not how I want to treat like a sacred human being.
Mm-hmm.
And that normally shifts me because it's not like in that moment, I just like somebody sprinkles fairy dust and I start listening, but it does like calm me down and help recenter me into like Eric being like a child of God that's really valuable that I want to treat with kindness and respect.
Yeah.
Then I do kind of change my posture of like, oh, how am I loving him in this moment? How am I listening? I want good for you. I want goodness for you. What is it that you're saying to me? And I do feel like it kind of changes. It softens me because I don't start off like very soft.
Yeah. I think that's where we ultimately like end up. You know, I think like if things start to simmer over, you know, it does come off as like, you know, there's hurt, there's frustration, there's anger, there's, you know, like assumptions, there's all these things that are like, you know, boiling over, like I think in any relationship. But I think like where we end up landing, so to speak, is you're my partner. I'm not here to stab you or, you know, run over you or anything like that.
Right.
But, you know, we're both up to our ears in, you know, stressful things. We're trying to figure this out. And I think we always like land at this place of we do need to talk at a better time. We do need to get more disciplined about what we want to say. Mm-hmm. Because like Megan said, it's like, I think in a perfect world, we all have the perfect words to say, you know, but I think somebody mentioned something about like, there's a think to talkers and talk to thinkers, you know, which I was like, oh, that's actually really great. But I think a lot of people are talk to thinkers. So like, we're just like trying to get it out of us and it never comes out like perfect or clear. And that's, but I think everybody has this ideal that like, oh, I'm going to sit down and say what I think. It's like, you probably don't even know what you think.
Right. Exactly. In your head, it sounds perfect. Yeah. To get it out is a whole nother thing.
So I think having some grace, like with your partner that like, she probably doesn't know what she's trying to say. And this is going to come out clumsy. It's going to come out, you know, hard. We do need to get better. I love you. This is hard. Fair enough. We need to do better to carve out time.
Yeah.
But the other thing is too, I'm a talk to thinker. But the thing I will say is like, I don't think a lot of relationships have enough restraint. There are things that I would never say to Eric. And so I do feel like even when we're disagreeing, generally like there's no like low blows.
Yeah. Containment really is important.
Insults. Like I might be like I might be like unkind, you know, like in something I'm saying like, oh, you never clean the dishes or whatever. But I don't say like, I don't attack your character. There's like things I might want to say. And I think a lot before, like, and I normally don't say them even when I'm mad. And I do think that a lot of relationships like lose any degree of like respect in it. But I'm very aware. I don't know. I'm just very aware when I'm thinking something very like mean to say of like, do you really want to say that? And do you know the long-term like effect of saying that? Yeah. And I would say like neither of us, I don't really feel like you've ever hit me like with the
low blow. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I hope you would say the same.
No,
I don't know. Maybe
totally.
I have.
No, you never have. I mean, but to that point, you know, what I would say to that is, again, if you want to beat down your husband or beat down your wife, is that what you actually want? Like a beat down husband and a beat down, like the more you like beat up your spouse with things that are just low blows and unfair and just really pointed and, you know, kind of wicked. It's like, well, so do you want a spouse that's just now scared of you? Do you want one that's just disengaged? Because you have a spouse that feels like you're going to stab them every time you get into a conflict. They're just going to avoid you.
Right.
You know? And it's like, well, good luck. And I think that's why if you don't actually fight fair, nobody's going to want to engage with you because you're totally unpredictable, you know, and you're totally, you know, like the person you love the most is also the person that can really hurt you the most, 100%. You know, if you're having like a true vulnerable marriage, you know.
Yeah.
So what I would say, I mean, again, this isn't even a her, this is a me. I mean, this is a everybody. Some level of like restraint is incredibly important. You don't just say everything that you think.
Right.
I think that is a bad idea. People would say, oh, speak your mind, speak your truth, speak your heart. No, be quiet. Like, think, slow down. Make sure you're taking some things off the table. I don't think that just saying what's on your brain is wise inherently. That's with some level of, nuance to that, of course. But
I totally relate to that because I was the boiling pot and would just keep going and going and going and going. I wouldn't necessarily attack someone's character, but to your point, Megan, I wanted to be heard. This is a fight that I'm winning, and this is why I'm right, and da 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 da. But to your point, then, Eric, if you take some of that stuff off the table, the severity of it decreases over time, and you're like, that really is not even a big deal. I don't even know why I was complaining about that or why I was bitching about that, because it just simmers down a little bit. But in the heat of the moment, it's just front and center. But yeah, just taking the time to think about this is really what I want to say is super important, but hard to do.
Yeah. And I don't want to change I think you made a really good point about wanting, him to do something or something like that. And I will just say, if Megan is having trouble with something and she's just like, man, I'm so tired of unloading the dishwasher every day. We've had this exact conversation. It's like, Megan, it's not that I don't want to help you. It's not that I don't care. I don't even think about the dishwasher. I'm not wired that way. It's like, if I need a cup, I'll wash it so it's not an attack. But if you actually want me to do it, I need you to help me find a system to where I can remember to do it. I set alarms, I do all kinds of things because it's not in my nature to know. I think men and women do have inherently different things that they notice, things that, bother them, things that they're attuned to. So, but to get back to that point is I actually do want to take the load off of her. I'm just not generally thinking about these things. So you don't have to come at me hot. You just have to come at me and help me find a solution, because I actually do want to help you. Yeah. Even with something that I don't care about, like the dishes.
Right.
I mean, they're important. There was a baseline level of importance to that.
Which I think you helped me see too. I feel like we've just gotten a lot better at fighting, even in the relatively short time we've been married. But, I think men do have a gift to offer women, and this might be kind of an unpopular opinion. The more Eric kind of stood firm himself, the more it's helped me get clear. So, I remember a lot of fights early on. He was just do you just want to attack me and bitch, or do you want to talk about a solution? Mm-hmm. And at the time I thought to myself, you asshole, inside. Yeah. But I also was able to step back and see oh, he does have a point. What do I want? And so, after a lot of refinement, normally now I do come to the table, and instead of saying oh, I've done this, what are you doing? I actually do say hey, I'm feeling way overloaded right now. What can you help me come up with some solutions? Mm-hmm. Can we talk about this? And maybe it is more babies. We kind of brainstorm. Maybe it's Eric, maybe it's not. But I do generally think we try to come to the table, or it's really more me. I don't feel like Eric did the ever went through his own rendition of the bitching thing. But for the complaining, but it's I do think to myself, okay, do I want to have a 1 hour fight with Eric about all the things I think I'm doing that he's not doing, and then he tells me all the things he's doing that I don't think about, or do I want to solve the problem at hand, which is I'm really tired.
Yeah. Right.
And I do want to jump up because I know we're getting off topic. It's just I think we're going with the flow in some ways, but to Megan's point about me being firm, this. Another unpopular opinion. I think a lot of men, shrink because for me, I think my tendency is to be oh, well, there's some legitimacy to what she wants and all this kinds of stuff. And there is truth to that. But going back to our limited nature of things, I think where men could stand a little more firm or push back in some ways is, hey, I know you do this every single day, and I know that's annoying to you, but don't forget, in the middle of the night, if something's happening, I'm going to be the one that gets up and goes outside. I'm responsible for doing X, Y, and Z. And it's not a this or a that, but I think there is something to, hey, I know you're having stuff. I do a lot of things too. Let's negotiate what I can take off your plate and what I can't. But if you're coming at me with I always do this, it's there's a zillion things that I always do that you probably forget about, that you don't see every day. And so I think there
I know. I only see what I do. It's helpful to push back. And nobody wants, like, this is typical more female male, but like no woman really wants to just run over their husband. I mean, yeah, it feels good for a few minutes, but like you just feel out like too big, like a toddler that just, at least I did. I felt like a toddler that had a tantrum, and then you kind of have this awareness of like that other person doesn't like me or want to be around me.
Right.
And so it really was like, I think men do have this tendency to like get scared and retreat. But Eric's saying, like, again, do you want to solve this? And then also, here's all the things that I did.
I get under the house. I climb up the tree.
Yeah.
I get in the attic.
The moment you have a point, because I'm not that humble. But inside of me, I'm like, he has a point.
You wouldn't admit that, but.
No. Not that much humility. But inside of me, I do think, and I am glad that he pushes back and doesn't just like roll over.
Yeah. I love where this discussion is going, because it was leading into my next question. And I do want to capitalize on the couple's perspective and the male versus female. And that's kind of like what we were just talking about. But the song that I wrote for this month is called Listen. And getting into the hearing versus listening thing, there is definitely, at least from my experience, a stereotype of the male coming in with the solution saying, hey, this is how I think you should fix it. And the female is just coming forward saying, these are my emotions. I'm putting them on my sleeve, and I just want you to hold me, or I just want you to hear what I have to say. So I would love to hear your take on that. As far as, do you feel like in your relationship that there is more of a solution versus emotional representation, or do you guys both come to the table with more of the open-mindedness of it could go either way?
I think for me, again, as you just made a point, men want to come in and like, how do I fix the problem? But going back to like what we were saying earlier of the inherent differences, if I'm a fish and you want me to like thrive in the desert, that's not my inherent being. And that's not a cop-out. It's just men, I think men and women are different, and they have unique natural strengths and limitations. And I think in a wonderful marriage, you figure out how to like complement each other's differences. Right. Like, two difference combined together. Your audience can't see my hands, but I'm like putting, like clasping them, saying you cover more ground because you have different strengths and limitations. I think like for me, I'll just say like, I don't know personally when Megan wants to just vent or when she wants me to help her. So it's hard because I am going to jump into like, oh, well, why don't you just tell your friend this? Or why don't you just blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I know that that's annoying, but I also don't have a spider sense, going back to like missing the dishwasher every day. I don't have that in me. I think about just solving problems and fixing things. And how do I help make this better? And women, I think, do have this unique ability to sit and just talk of things and feel some level of relief and be seen and understood. And I'm not shutting that down, but it's like, you kind of got to preface me in some ways if you want to get what you actually want, which is me to stay out of the way and empathize with you. I can do that, but I also am going to run in every day with a bucket in my hand with water and try to put the fire out. That's my being. And I'm not saying there's no room to change and to move towards you. But again, if your husband's not doing that, then I think coach him and like try to find the words to say, hey, I just need you to listen. Please don't jump in. Yeah. Blam, word vomit. Yeah.
I agree. Or like
this is hard.
We don't do this, but I would if I had to. Set a timer that's like, hey, can I talk? Because I think a lot of times men, I see it with Eric. I'll see it in his eyes. He doesn't necessarily tell me, but I'm like, oh, he thinks I'm never going to end. He thinks I don't know when this is going to end. So it's like, I don't know. If we were really struggling with that, I would say, could I set a timer for 5 minutes and just tell you for 5 minutes everything I want to say? And then you can say something. But I do agree with Eric. I think it's easy probably everybody, but I hear it more with women, and I experience it to be like, oh, it just happened to me yesterday. Men like to talk about work. And so I ask Eric, how's your day? How was the work? How was this meeting? How do you feel about that? Whatever. And then after like a while, suddenly I start to think, I had this big event in my day and he didn't ask me about it. And I start to think, oh, he doesn't care about me because he's not asking about this. And then I was like, come on, Megan. So I was just like, hey, I want to tell you about this. And then Eric was like, yeah, I want to know about that.
I was like, I want to stop talking about my work.
Yeah.
You know?
And then I talked about it, but I think a lot of people come away from, they would have just let him talk, never said, I want to talk to you about this event. And then been like, oh, he never asked about
Bitter,
it.
right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so there is this, trust me, I get it all. Like I hear it all the time. People are like, I don't want to have to ask for what I want.
Yeah, that's come out of my mouth before.
That's when your relationship will die. I do tell people that. And I do believe that. It's like, if I clean the whole house and everything's looking awesome, and Eric comes in, I actually don't just expect him. I say like, don't you want to see what I did today? And we kind of play. And then I walk around, I'm like, look at this. I actually ran the dishwasher 3 times and unloaded it.
No,
I did 6 loads of laundry. Yeah. And then Eric will be like, you're amazing. And we're kind of like,
I love that. It's playful. And like, you're making
I cooked dinner while I was also dancing with the kids.
Yeah.
Like, look at me. This is how I did it. But it's like, I don't sit there and like hope and wait for him to notice these things. Again, I think there's this generosity, like having a generosity towards your partner. I know that Eric will play with me if I do it. And I do want him to notice all the things.
Sure, absolutely.
And so it's kind of like, okay, I'll just tell you and then he'll notice and then that'll work. And so that's what I do.
Yeah. Have you, either one of you, ever taken the other person's comments personally and it wasn't meant to be personally and you're just like, what just happened there?
Yeah, I think that's, natural, I think. Again, going back to the whole, the people that you love the most are the ones that could hurt you the most. And, it's just like anything. We both get caught up in all the things that we're doing and it's hard and it's really stressful. And I think in some instances, you almost want the other person to feel like how hard it is for you. And I think if that comes out, it could feel like resentment or like you don't care like what I'm going through. You only care about what and I think like that can be hurtful, and you feel, but I think you just always have to come back to the fact, oh, this is somebody who loves you, that's committed to you for life. Like that's not actually true. It feels like you're drowning and your partner's just like, whatever, I got my own, good luck, you're on your own. I guess like when certain things come out, it can be, hurtful, but I think it's just always coming back to, we don't know the words we want to say in the moment. We're prone to our emotions and our feelings too. Again, giving each other the benefit of the doubt and the grace to each other. Like I think it brings us both back to, and we remember that.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's like setting yourself up for success. I actually I'm like thinking, have I ever taken anything personal I'm sure, but if anything, I'm like, it's probably him. Like, I feel like Eric is softer than me and more empathetic. And so I sometimes feel like I might be firing a little strong, more so than he is to me. But I think 2 things. I still remember, I don't know what I said to you, but we were standing in the kitchen. And this was years ago. And Eric said like, oh, like I think we were just playing, but you just poked me in the eye, which was really helpful to me because I felt like what he was saying is like, oh, that actually wasn't funny. Verbally poked.
Yeah, it's like when you're wrestling and you accidentally elbow somebody in the nose or something. It's like, well, I know you didn't mean to, but that really did hurt.
I don't know if we were joking or if we were having a real conversation, but he like kind of stopped it and said like, oh, we were wrestling, but you just took it up a notch. Yeah. And like, now you just put me in the eye and that's not fun. And I thought like, oh, that's actually helpful feedback for me because I kind of know myself enough to like I knew what he was saying was true. And it helped me learn how to communicate better. Like, oh, okay, that was too much.
Yeah. Like a puppy when they yelp or something. It's like,
yes. Or like, even like my kids, when we're playing, sometimes it's like, no, like we can play, but don't do that. Don't step on me, like that's So I think there is some level of feedback that's helpful. I think that we're all navigating. It's like, how much can you say? And that's where it's the couple shit. It's the couple problem. Like if you're taking something personally, can you tell your partner that was like too much or whatever was happening? And then also if you're the person who's said too much? Can you also acknowledge that might be too much? So I think there's that. And then the other thing is having enough credit in the bank or something like that, where it's like, okay, if Eric maybe says something to me that I felt like was a little harsh or too quick or whatever, and we haven't spent any time together, we haven't been on any dates, and we haven't, like, I haven't felt the love at all. Of course, I'm going to take that like way more personally than if he does it on a different day. Same thing happened, but it's like I felt more connected and more loved. Well, then you were able to be more generous. We'll have times where we're not getting along. I'm like, oh, well, we haven't like spent time together. Like, we need to go spend time together. We need to do something fun. So it's, again, communicating in the moment, but also making sure all the other things are in place. And I think, like, as a woman specifically, I run a bunch of groups and I work with a lot of men in my office. And I feel like I hear men say a lot, some version of like, my wife is really focused on the kids and not on me, in their own words. And then I like start to look in my own marriage and I'm like, oh, I think that's happening there too. Make sure you're prioritizing your marriage.
Yes, right.
You know, it's so easy for all these other things to get in the way, whether it's work or kids or whatever, but just, I guess, like, make sure your values are in order.
So true. So ending on that positive note, I would love to hear from you guys. How do you ensure that each of you feels seen and heard in a conversation, or just, you know, in your relationship in general?
I think she does a good job of, it's not mirroring, but she's able to like ingest. I think it's just like anything in learning. The way that you show that you've learned something is that you can recite it or you can say it back in your own words. In some ways, that's the best testament that you've learned something. You've internalized it. You're able to like speak it back to us. And I think we do this kind of type of mirroring where she says something along the lines, I'm hearing you say that you don't like it when I do X, Y, and Z. Yes, that's pretty close. Or I'll come back and say, kind of, like, that's, you know, and then you kind of tweak it a little bit. And then she comes back and saying, okay, just so like we're clear, I'm hearing you say that, you know, you don't want me to say this or say that. And it's like, yes, or kind of, so, you know, and you're just like tweaking it. But I think that is a good tool, saying it back to your spouse. And actually, like you said, with, you know, the person who's kind of helped us have conversations sometimes, he's been great at that. He's like, stop, look at Eric, tell him this. Does that sound true to you? Okay, kind of, you know, so it's just this constant going back and trying to refine. But I think that's a good way of like letting your spouse know that you heard them.
Yeah.
Stop and repeat back what they're actually asking for. And then say, is this what you're trying to, do I have this right? You know, and I think that's a good starting point.
I think that's like a really practical in the moment thing. And then the two things I would add, I mean, come on, we all want change. I know that Eric does not want me to move his shit, even though he leaves it laying all around. But he works on picking up.
Every so often.
Love it.
And it's not perfect, but I acknowledge it. And I work on not moving things because I can acknowledge how annoying that might be, even though I really like things organized. I think there's hearing things, but like, people want change. And so again, you don't have to be perfect, but make some sort of effort.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second thing is, do you know what your partner most desperately in their core wants to hear? I know that Eric, I mean, this is not going to be exact, but generally, I know that Eric wants to know that he's kind, that he's helpful, that he's a good leader and provider for our family. Generally, that he's like a good man and working hard for our family. I try to like hold those things and make sure he knows that I see those things and value them. Am I leaving anything else you want to know?
Great.
But like, so like, I don't know, when we're in conversations, not fights, but like when we're in conversations, I'm kind of trying the best I can to acknowledge, hey, I see how hard you're working for our family. Hey, like, you're a good man. Like, you did this today in your, whatever I heard in the story. Hey, I see that you get up early every single day and work and then cook breakfast for us. I'm ungrateful. You know, I'm telling him I ordered eggs and how I don't want the same thing. But like, again, it's like the work outside of the hard conversations. If you don't know what your partner most desperately wants to hear about themselves, you're already failing to some degree. You're already on like the wrong track. So I think Eric's What Eric's saying is like, yes, absolutely. Like 100% repeat back. Is this what you're saying? But then also try to take some action, and then also know what the core of their being wants to hear.
That's a great way. I do want to like kind of touch back on the implementation part, because I think that people do get fixated on that. Like she just said, yeah, you want things to change. You want your husband to eventually just unload the dishwasher, or you want him to stop putting his clothes. That is true and that is important. But I think if you obsess on the fact that like, oh, he's still not changing after I've told him a zillion times, again, saying things like when you're angry or upset, I think that wanes over time. It's like, oh yeah, she tells me, she screams at me, you better wash the dishes. Like, okay, I'll remember for a week, but that's going to wane. Right. So I think, again, if you actually want something, work with your spouse to develop make it to where the other one can succeed. They're your partner. Whatever you got to do. I mean, Megan knows this about me, and I know it's a quirky thing of me, but I set a zillion timers, reminders. Our Amazon Alexa goes off every 25 minutes, and it's super annoying. And that's kind of how I live my life. But the thing about me in specific is like, I get so hyper-focused on things. I am a very detailed hyper-focus. I'm not a multitasker. Like, I truly believe you can only focus on one thing at a time. I'm not, I'm focusing on what I'm looking at. So if I don't have somebody tapping me on the shoulder every 10 seconds saying, hey, you got a meeting in 20 minutes. Hey, you need to pick up your clothes. Hey, you need to do, it's just, that's, if Megan wants to get the most out of me, she needs to use the systems that will work for me to actually get what she wants. If not, this is going to wane and you're going to have the same issues.
Well, also you have to be sure, like you also have women. I hate when Eric says this, but I do agree. Like women like want too much. And so
I say that one.
I feel like you kind of say that.
Elaborate.
Like, but I feel like you have to acknowledge, like, women are not men and men are not women. Like, I know that might be obvious, but like, I actually do say that to myself a lot of times throughout the day. Some version of like, Eric's not me and I'm not him, or men are not women, no matter, like I actually get mad at what you see on the internet. I don't know. They're trying to make everything equal. And I get it as a mother, like, oh, the invisible load. But the reality is, I can unload the dishwasher, talk on the phone, and make lunch at the same time. Eric cannot do that. And I think it creates this resentment in women of like, well, I do all this. How do you not do that? Yeah. And so, but the thing is that we're different. Eric can say what he wants, but he like is going to wash that pan like you've never seen anybody wash it before. And I'm like, going to use this again tomorrow. So I think you also have to think about, like, I think about this. Oh, if Eric unloads the dishwasher, he's not me. So it's going to take him forever. And do I really want him unloading the dishwasher when he only has like 2 hours with our kids between work and like when they go to bed? Yeah. No, because there is a trade-off. This guy I'm working with right now, I get it. I totally get it. His wife wants him to plan the date. Like she plan the date from A to Z, pick the night, pick the place, pick the times, get the babysitter, take her out, whatever. I get that desire as a woman, but sitting with this man, it's like, he doesn't know what the place is that she just wants to go to. And I'm like, can you ask her for like 3 recommendations, And it's like, no, because that won't be doing it A to Z. So he is like thinking about where to go on this date. And then he doesn't have the babysitter contacts. And I know that might not be fair. I am annoyed that I have to arrange the babysitters, but it's also way easier for me. So then he has to get the babysitter contact, try to communicate with this person. He doesn't communicate. This is the shit. This is what he's doing when he's supposed to be at work. So do you want him to do this and then therefore like this is going to take him like at least 2 hours, I could do in 10 minutes, So I get the desire from the wife that wants this to happen, but I think it's just like, okay, how bad do you want this to happen? And do you realize that this is like 2 hours out of his work day that he's doing this? And then he might end up not being as good at his, I know this is a like little example, but a lot of these, now he might not be as good as his job. Now he might make less money. Now you're going to be unhappy that he's making less money or not enough money for you, whatever. And so it seems like a small issue, like, oh, he can't plan a date. But then it's like, well, look at how this is going to like snowball. Yeah. So I think I would say like also be really careful about things you're asking for. Because women are limited, but we're also
resourceful.
So resourceful and efficient. Yeah. And men are in their own way. They have their own skills. But I do think like as women, I notice it myself. I hear it in my office. It's like we just push and push and push and push and push. And men are not like limitless human beings. They are humans too. And I forget that. So
yeah. And I think like to that point, and to in some ways defend myself of the women want too much. I'm gonna comments on that.
Words. Yeah, I guess.
But to that point, I think one of the stories that I've talked to Megan about is, I don't know if it was like some Instagram meme or some TikTok thing, but it's basically the gist is like, oh, men will have an apartment, with a beanbag in it and like a TV on a tray table, and women just completely can't understand how anybody can live like this. And they're happy, and they've got like a bean bag and like a bag of chips and a TV on a tray table or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, it's because men are inherently different. It's not to say that men don't want things or don't like things. It's just we're not thinking of the same things. And to your point, if she wanted me to plan a date, one, it would induce like a lot of panic. But the first thing I'd be doing is, TikTok, great places to take your wife, ChatGPT, trendy, female hot places to go in Nashville, like, because I don't have a compass for that. I don't have a pulse on that. So to Megan's point, it's like, okay, when it comes down to pure resources, do you want me spending 3 hours stressing out of my mind to try to fulfill this fantasy that I care about you? Or do you want to acknowledge the fact that I adore you and I would go to any stupid, trendy female place with you, but I'm just not, attuned to that in the same way. So I think that's just like, again, going back to like the innate priorities and differences. And obviously this isn't the same across the board. Men and women, they have a lot of traits that cross and things, but
sure.
To that point, like, yeah, women do have a unique nature to notice other things. And I think that makes them incredibly valuable in different ways. So,
yeah, I agree. Thank you guys both so much for being willing to share this private part of your lives. Before I let you go, though, I wanted to see if you had any final words of wisdom on this topic, hearing versus listening, that we haven't already kind of touched on.
I think you don't always have the words. You don't always have the capacity to listen, but I think giving your spouse the grace of like trying to, knowing that this is like an open negotiation, will kind of fill in that gaps. Because again, not to shoot down the premise that we should be listening, we should be heard, we should, all these things. I think it's a tall order, in a perfect world where we have, unlimited capacity, we could listen and hear each other and communicate, and it would all be puppies and rainbows. Right. I think there are tools to help that we're always working on. But I think the biggest tool is taking a step back and saying, this is my spouse. I've committed to negotiate with them every step of the way. So if I can't hear you, if I can't find the right words, we will work this out at some point, some way. So
Eric's good at the reassurance. I'm not the same. Yeah, I agree in a different, but it's like, I would just be really clear with yourself on what your goal is. I know it sounds cliche, but it's like, do you want to be right and alone? Because I think that's normally what happens for me when I lay down the hammer of how right I am. I end up alone, versus what I normally want is some level of care or closeness or connection. So in my best self, I drop everything I'm saying and say, like, I just want you to care about me. And then I feel like something happens where Eric's like, I care about you, and we come together. But the more I hold into being right or like criticizing, it just disconnects you. Yeah. And so I think in a disagreement or in your relationship, ask yourself what your goal is. And then if what you're doing is helping you achieve that goal, can be like a good check-in with yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I really do think that our listeners are going to learn so much from hearing our conversation tonight. So thank you both again. Really do appreciate you here.
Yeah, of course. So happy to be here. Thank you for having us.